going on, everybody? It's a new edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota, and you always know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. All right, people, we have reached that point of the By the Horns podcast where we have to do the season in review. At times, it felt like we would never get here, and also it was just like, man, it happened a little quicker than expected on certain levels, and I'll explain that when we get to a certain portion of the seasons. But you know who I'm rocking with, man. I got my guy, Drew Stevens of the Bigs, holding it down with me, and of course, the one and only CHSN Bulls insider, K.C Johnson. We're attacking it with our big three, so it's going to be a very lively, intriguing, and very introspective conversation when it comes to this Bulls season, because there were a lot of layers coming into the season, towards the middle of the season, of course, post-trade deadline, at the trade deadline, and what we saw, how things culminated with this Bulls team. So Casey, Drew, myself, we have been in the locker rooms. We have been everywhere with this Bulls team, especially Casey and Drew. So I'm just starting off by giving you guys flowers for just what you're able to do and what you've been doing covering this Bulls team at the practices, in the locker rooms, at the games, traveling to see this group, and really giving fans that are Chicago Bulls fans in the city of Chicago some in-depth, great coverage time and time again throughout a very grueling season. So I'm just going to start off that way, because you guys are great at what you do, and it's been an honor sharing this By the Horns podcast with you. So I'm not trying to start this off by saying the goodbyes, but we're not there yet, because again, we have a lot of conversation coming up your way. So guys, we were all there at Media Day when things kicked off for this Bulls team back in October, and there was an energy there, and the energy was more curious energy of what this Bulls team would be, because on one hand, you had Zach LaVine coming back into the season after missing the majority of the previous season due to the foot issue that he ultimately had to have a procedure done to get himself ready. We talked to Zach, and he explained the workouts and just how he was just ready to play basketball. There was some question marks that others had around Zach LaVine's name and what he could be with this team. And you have that aspect of it. You have the aspect of Patrick Williams, who was coming into the season on the new 5-year, $90 million deal. Of course, he missed time as well for himself with his injuries. So there were question marks there. How would Coby White look with this season now that Zach LaVine is back? No DeMar DeRozan, of course, for this Bulls team, because he was traded to Sacramento in the offseason. So a new look group. Ayo Dosunmu stepping up into a new role with this group as well. And then, of course, Josh Giddy. The Bulls trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddy, straight up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The big question mark on who Josh Giddy would be. We know how his time ended with the Thunder, and there were people and skeptics out there wondering how he would fit with his team. So anybody can take it this way or however you want to take it going into this conversation, but what were the expectations that you guys had for this Bulls team, especially when we saw them at Media Day and just heard everything from them?
Well, I'll start, and Cam, it's funny you bring up Media Day, because it's fun. To me, it's like the feeling on Media Day was the exact feeling we had at the season-ending news conference, but with a different vibe to it, and here's where I'll explain to that. So I remember the dominant theme at Media Day was like, did they do enough to get out of the middle? Because they traded Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan, but you still had Zach LaVine, you still had Nikola Vucevic, you still had Coby White. So, even though they were trying to make some changes to the roster, you kind of felt like this team's going to be kind of stuck in the middle. Fast forward to what we just witnessed a few days ago at the season-ending news conference. They're still stuck in the middle, 39-43. Now, it does have a slightly different vibe to it, because they're in the middle, because you got, obviously, a very strong season from Coby White. You got a very strong season, or strong second half of the season, from Josh Giddy. And then you got some nice development from Matas Buzelis over the course of his rookie season. So it has a little bit more positive feel to it, but the Bulls are kind of still where we thought they were going to be, right in the middle, 9 seed, 39-43, and in that play-in picture. So I don't know how you feel about it, Drew, but that's kind of my take from Media Day to season-ending news conference.
Yeah, I feel similarly. A lot of ebbs and flows to the season. What trades would go down, would Zach be moved, would Vuce be moved? A lot of talk about Matas Buzelis and how much time he was wasn't getting earlier on in the season and what he ended up getting once the roster kind of shifted. And to your point, there definitely are still questions about the direction this franchise is choosing to go and the way they're going about this transition phase, as AK has called it. So I don't know, man. It was nice. It was a breath of fresh air to see Matas Buzelis play the way that he did down the stretch. That was kind of my focus going into this year, was you've got this new shiny toy, so to speak, in Matas Buzelis, hometown guy, very self-aware, but also very self-confident. And I think it proved this season just in his demeanor, the way he attacked certain things, the way he learned from all the experiences he had, the way that the coaching staff decided to bring him along this season. I was one of the people who were kind of like, man, just put this guy on the court, let him play, let him take his lumps. What do you really have to lose? But I really learned something from Billy Donovan this season and the way that he chose to bring him up. Little things that he would point out before games and after games about, just the learning experience that guys like Matas have to go through in order to, contribute to winning basketball on the court. Learning how to eat the right things, how to prepare themselves physically, mentally, the amount of sleep they need to get, what they shouldn't be eating before games. Like, all of that was things that I didn't necessarily take into account when I factored in, what I wanted to see from this team and what I wanted to see from Matas Buzelis. So he was kind of my overwhelming kind of positive theme from this first season that he had with this Bulls team.
Yeah, no doubt. And you take it from this standpoint, and KC, we've done this pod, and Drew, we've done this pod where I've mentioned this about Matas, that they're physically and just facial appearance and facial stuff with him. You saw the growth just from when he was shaving as a baby-faced rookie to him growing a goatee and finish off the season that way. And it felt like his game, as his facial hair started to grow in, his game grew as well, and that confidence level was massive. And Billy Donovan said something very important during media day when it came to Matas, and to your point, Drew, of people wanting to see him out there and just kind of thrown into the fire, essentially, so he can grow. But Billy said something that was important. He said that there are different ways that players can develop, and that's just giving them minutes, is to your point, Drew, of the things that they eat, of course, watching film, breakdowns in that aspect, the everyday life of an NBA player, of your sleep patterns, your rituals, pre and post, also making sure that you're prepared. And then also just the turnaround that it is when you have those nights of back-to-back, and just the amount of games that teams play in this shortened span when you think about 5 games in a week, right? Or those back-to-back games where you have to travel. So it's a lot that goes with the growth and development of a young player. And we've seen that from Matas. And so you have to give your praise and your recognition to Billy Donovan and his coaching staff, and also the medical staff, of making sure that Matas developed the right way. And he has really a ceiling that is unlimited when you look at how he was able to finish off the second half of the season. And speaking of the medical staff, we have to mention Lonzo Ball coming into the season, obviously media day. And I want to say maybe expectations that you had for him, but we really didn't know, because we hadn't seen Lonzo for consecutive seasons because of that knee procedure that he was dealing with. And that was one of the biggest question marks that you had with this Bulls team of, one, how would Lonzo look? What would he be with this group? Because you had to kind of move out of your head the first 30 to 35 games for Lonzo when he was with this Bulls team, where the Bulls were playing exciting basketball, and not only were one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, but also one of the best teams in the NBA. So there was a caution that you took with Lonzo, and just, okay, how many games would he play? Of course, he was going to be on a minutes restriction. Will he travel? Like, will those minutes restrictions kind of be lifted at some point? And the one thing that I took from Lonzo is that, one, he's going to be the poster child for this procedure that was taking place with the cartilage being removed and placed into his knee. And then also just how he was able to show the old Lonzo that we saw in that first year first season with the Bulls, of defensively, but also making the extra pass, which seems simple, but just the way that Lonzo plays the game, it just ignited this Bulls team. So what were your guys' feelings on Lonzo and kind of coming into the season, and what you think he could bring to a team that didn't have an identity because there was so much up in the air with this group.
He said it himself in his exit interview that he exceeded his own physical expectations for himself physically. And I would be on board with that. I'm going to be honest. I was absolutely one of the skeptical ones. I was hoping I would be wrong, but I did not think that the knee thing would hold up and play and let him play to the level that he played. And that's the biggest takeaway I have from his season. I mean, obviously the wrist injury is so disappointing given that his knee was as good as it was. But because he still only played 35 games, just like he did in 21-22, but for a different reason. But putting the wrist injury aside, which I don't want to minimize it because it was significant, but like I was expecting to see a ball out there surviving on like IQ and guile and like old man game. And that dude's athleticism was like basically maybe not exactly like 21-22, but it was pretty close. His ability to navigate screens, his ability to pursue loose balls, his ability to read plays and blow them up actions before they started. All that stuff really, really surprised me and quite frankly surprised Lonzo because he told us that shared his own concerns on that level in training camp. So all that huge success. I thought it was cool. Yesterday he retweeted the Colorado Avalanche hockey player that went through the same procedure as him. I don't unfortunately know his name. Probably couldn't pronounce it anyway. But and it's a remarkable story, and capped by the meeting the donor's family. So huge win. Obviously, you want to get that wrist right, but he's back on a team friendly deal. I think that's another one of the positives from this season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Lonzo Ball, man? This dude misses the amount of time that he missed, comes back and is still having a profound effect on the team on both sides of the court. He's just a robot out there, man. And to your point, KC, he did tell us that he didn't think that he would have the same amount of athleticism that he had before the operations. But I believe it was that first preseason game he was calling for oops, talking about how he still missed him. It was just yeah. It was shocking. It was shocking to say the least to see what he was able to do coming off the amount of time that he came off of, not being on the court and having to go through so many trials and tribulations to just get back on the court. And it's kind of it's bittersweet, man, that the knee held up, but his wrist didn't. Of all the things we thought might curtail his year this season, it was a wrist.
Yeah. And something in Memphis where when you think about that game and Lonzo being inserted into that ball game of what he was able to change the dynamic of that. He did it doing typical Lonzo Ball things on the defensive end. Is that being aware on the weak side and helping over, a guy that's, making up for a teammate's mistake or just lack of awareness and just sacrificing himself and his body for a possession for this team. And so I think when you have a guy that, again, Zach said this on Media Day. Patrick Williams, when I spoke to him, said this as well. But you can see it with Lonzo. He was ready to play. It's like, kind of like K.C., you talked about you expected him to play like an old man type game. It felt like for Lonzo, he was like, man, I haven't played ball like in so long, like competitive basketball against an NBA team that anything that's required of me, I'm ready to do. So he was diving on the floor, falling out of bounds, just doing so much. And unfortunately, the game in Memphis is where that wrist injury in that situation began for him, just because he was sacrificing his body for this team. And you look at what he was able to do in his first 7 games this season, where he averaged 10 points. And you go to the game against the Knicks. I mean, you go to the game against the Detroit Pistons where he put in double-digit points, and he looked comfortable out there. And it's again, people hear that and they think it's such a simple thing, but this guy had missed multiple seasons. I mean, it takes a lot of people a while, especially when they've missed a good chunk of their career, and I'm talking about multiple seasons with Lonzo Ball, to get back onto the court and really look the part. And he definitely looked the part for this Bulls team, scoring the basketball, but more so facilitating and getting after it defensively.
He got up to close out on a three-point shooter on the play. He almost had season-ending wrist injury, man. That tells you all you need to know about his season and his impact. I mean, I'll never forget that play because, like you said, he sacrificed his body, and then he got up off the floor and went out and closed on a three-point shooter. So, no, remarkable season. I'll ask you guys this, though. if re-signing him costs the Bulls Trey Jones, are you good with it?
Ooh, that's a good one, KC.
Because I will tell you this, because I know this for a fact. I've reported this before. Like, I don't believe, obviously the Bulls had trade offers for Lonzo at the deadline. Now they didn't like him because they would have added money, long-term money to their books. They could have got some draft capital while taking on a bad contract. Coincidentally, Memphis was one of the leading contenders for Lonzo's services. And at the time, if you remember, Trey, hadn't done much, and there was not a lot of high internal expectations for him. And so I'm not saying that's going to happen, but, and to me, the Lonzo story is such a great feel-good story. I have no problem with it. But, Trey Jones might have been too expensive anyway. But I think Lonzo being back diminishes the chances for Trey Jones to return even more.
Yeah, no doubt, especially the team-friendly deal that Lonzo has, right? I mean, 2-year, $20 million for himself. So you would hope that he continues to build on from what we saw. And, this is something that all athletes and hoopers want, is to stay away from injury. But if he can do that and get back to some form where we've seen the good Lonzo this past season and build off of that and maybe kind of throw it back to what we saw in 21-22, then yes, definitely. The sacrifice of Trey Jones for Lonzo makes sense. And I think that just with his work ethic, right, and his mentality and just the taste that he got from the season of what he could do after missing extended time, he's ready to take another step with his run with this Bulls team. So, yes, I'm with it. I'm not sure on how Drew feels on this, but Trey Jones, he showed me some things that I didn't know that he could do. And he's a guy that, you start to see with his time in San Antonio, very serviceable point guard. Some teams would take him as a starting point guard, but more so in the backup role. But, man, he made the most out of his minutes. And it's not just facilitating, scoring the basketball. And it was simple things like basket cutting and backdooring guys where he got, for me, from what I saw him do that, a good chunk of his points, Drew.
Yeah, the way he would get to the rim, get in the lane, finish at the basket, those were all things that I was not – I did not have on my bingo card for Trey Jones. I think I was
are you back at Apple Valley in Minnesota? Like, are you back at Apple Valley High School? Is this what's going on, Trey? Like,
yeah, maybe it was that duo, that rivalry that him and Kobe have. Like, you're not going to outdo me. That UNC Duke thing they got going on. But, no, I think I'm going to go opposite of you, Cam. I think – if only for the sake of completely just trying to turn this thing over, for as much as I enjoy watching Lonzo Ball play, for as great as it's been or it was to see him get back on the court, I'm ready for things to just kind of shift, turn over a new leaf. Everybody on this roster who was kind of a part of this old thing, just kind of let's turn it over. Let's change it. Let's get into this new or latest iteration of this Bulls team. Obviously, Coby White is going to be here, we think. 𝗵'C Williams is going to be here, we think, but let's change this thing up a little bit and get moving on the next episode, so to speak.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And speaking of turning over a new leaf, Zach LaVine, you have him, as I mentioned, Media Day and sitting down with him one-on-one on CHSN for Bulls Media Day. And it was just the positioning of him and how he sat, just kind of off to the side, had his arm kind of resting on the chair. And he was just like, I'm ready to hoop. I'm ready to hoop. He had missed the majority of last season, as I mentioned when we started the pod, with that foot issue. Got it repaired, got himself in great shape. And KC, we discussed this, and Drew and I discussed this as well. He matured as a scorer with his team. And I think for Zach, that was the next evolution of his game, where he could make plays without having that basketball and creating all of the time, like coming off of catch and shoots and just allowing the game to come to him. So that was a breath of fresh air for the time that he was with his Bulls team leading up until the trade deadline, because he had games where we've seen it before in typical Zach LaVine fashion where he would just take over, but it was more so the way that he took over games. The shots weren't being forced. He just allowed himself to fall into the game and allow the game to come to him, especially in the second half where he turned things up. I mean, you want a great example? Go back to the Detroit game against the Pistons where he just exploded in that fourth quarter from the arc, KC.
Yeah, and I mean, the phrase I kept using with him on the air was he's a player at peace. I mean, it was a completely different Zach LaVine this season to the one that was uncharacteristic last season. And that was, I'd obviously covered Zach's entire tenure here, and that was not the Zach LaVine that I know last season, either on or off the court. And so to see him kind of reclaim that identity and be a leader and, still score as efficiently as he did. And then quite frankly, help the franchise, because that trade ended up being a pretty decent trade for the Bulls. Certainly better than probably what was on the table prior, where you would have had to attach assets to get off of that money. So, it broke up into 3 smaller contracts that you can potentially trade Huerter or Collins down the road. Even if Trey walks, you've obviously reclaimed your first round pick. So that you gotta assess that part of it too when you look at Zach LaVine's season as a whole. I'm well documented and very much on the record that I was a big Zach LaVine fan, and I did not want to see him traded, but it was nice to see him play the level he did and then comport himself at the level that he did off the court until he was traded.
He set the tone for media day, kind of squashing any idea of him being distracted or trade talk. You just shut it down immediately. And to your point, Cam, like he just came into the season just ready to ball, ready to hoop, let everything else fall where it may, wherever he may have landed come trade deadline, or if he would have wound up staying in Chicago. Like he just, like you said, K.C., just at peace. And it was good to see him there, just in my limited experiences with him last season and everything that went on, the rumors and the injury, him eventually signing with Clutch and everything that came with that. So it was good to see him in the type of headspace that he was in. I, like you, KC, I like Zach. I thought that, I think that he got a little bit of a raw deal from the fan base, in certain corners of the fan base. I think he's a better player than some give him credit for. But he had a phenomenal season. It was great to see him playing alongside Lonzo and Josh at times, and seeing him actually back cut and be rewarded for back cutting and not having to have the ball in his hands, every possession. But no, I enjoyed the season that he had. I feel bad for him and DeMar DeRozan now over in Sacramento. That's for somebody else to figure out.
Yeah. That's up for the front office over at Sacramento to figure out what's going on there and how to best utilize Zach and DeMar. So 2 guys for this Bulls team that, gave it their all for sure, especially since we're talking Zach LaVine and what he was able to do in the city of Chicago. He just grew up. I think really when you look at Zach from the time that he arrived during the 2017-2018 season to where he just finished off with his Bulls team at the trade deadline when they made that move, you saw a guy that not only shedded that title of being just a dunker, and Zach hates being trying to, described as a dunker. Yeah, he won the dunk contest back-to-back years. He showed that not only can he be an elite scorer in this game, but he proved it by earning himself to the All-Star team multiple times. Of course, winning the Olympic gold medal and really setting himself in the elite group when it comes to 2 guards, shooting guards in this league that can take over ball games and get buckets. And when we saw Zach take that next step this season, I think ultimately I'll keep going back to him maturing as a scorer. And I hate limiting him to just saying maturing as a scorer. He matured as a basketball player, right, on the court. And I think part of that, K.C., to your point, was that he matured as a man off the court and just found himself at peace and just, really locked in. And not to say that he wasn't locked in before, but understood what was expected of him in this role. And he said that, hey, if I'm in this spot where things change, then I'm still going to give it my all. I'm not going to change anything with my approach and who I am and what I'm going to give to this team in the city. And so I think that's a great testament and mark of how he's grown as a man on and off the court.
Absolutely. And, he's in another tough situation, though. I mean, that losing player tag is going to follow him, unfortunately, in Sacramento, because they're going to be kind of stuck in the mud here from my perspective for a little bit here. So I've always maintained he looked pretty good on that Olympic team. So if you put good players around Zach, I think he can contribute to winning basketball. But I agree with Drew. I think he got a little bit of a raw deal here. I'm well documented on that. He is a flawed player, absolutely, but he's not an empty calorie scorer. That's the other label he shed here. Yeah. Not only did he shed just a dunker label, he's, you look at his efficiency in those All-Star years and in the first half of this year, off the charts, man. Like, among like the league's elite,
Yeah.
Yes, decision making not always on point, but definitely improved defensively. Obviously, left you wanting more times. Not a perfect player, but a pretty damn good one. And I know that the Bulls are going to be seeking someone to be as good as Zach LaVine because he was a 2-time All-Star here.
Yeah, and hopefully that next name that we discussed can ascend to that All-Star level, and he's trending that way as Coby White. And this is another guy where we've seen the growth and maturity, but season by season, we've seen Coby either add something to his game or just take another step when it comes to his leadership with this group. And if you go back to last season with Zach missing the majority of the season because of that foot, you saw Coby really step up, and it was the Coby and 𝗏𝗏 show with what they were able to do with this Bulls team and how they were able to help carry this group, especially go back to the play-in game, which does count in our eyes when you look at the stats from Coby. And at that time, it was a career high of 42 points, but the NBA doesn't want to count that for some weird reason. But the wins and losses in the play-in count doesn't make sense. But Coby, for everything that surrounded him, for what his role would be with this group, you bring in Josh Giddy to add another point guard to this group, where you were having the uncertainty of what Lonzo Ball would be. You still had Ayo on this roster. Of course, you understood that Zach would have a good part of the ball handling responsibility with this Bulls team. So how would Coby fit? And we saw him struggle early on. We didn't see Coby White finish off the way that he did this season in the early parts. And I think it was a part of him just adjusting to his new role and trying to work that chemistry with Josh, with Zach, who was back on the court, with Vučević as well, who was trying to take it, and we'll talk about Vučević in a little bit, who was trying to get himself back into the Vučević that we've seen before in terms of his efficiency shooting the basketball. And I believe he was able to do that for sure from the three-point arc. But it was Coby trying to, again, adjust to a new role and really see how he fits with this group. But I'll tell you what, he took another step, an absolutely massive step after the trade deadline. He was trending that way as we got closer to it, but it got to a point for me, guys, I'm not sure if you feel the same way, where you're looking at this thing, and it felt like Coby had I'm blanking on the movie that Tom Cruise was in with the ship that was taken over by the pirates, but it felt like Coby was just like, yeah, I'm the captain now. This is my team. This is my team. Let's move according to how I'm playing. And it was great to see. It was refreshing to see that. And again, to see a young guy, not young guy, Coby's a grown man, but to see a guy really fully embrace being the leader, being the face of this team.
Man, Coby White is so damn easy to root for. Like, you just want him to enjoy all the success that he possibly can. He spoke to this when we asked him about, anybody who thought that a backcourt with him and Josh Giddy was kind of dead upon arrival because of the defensive liabilities. But he said it very matter-of-factly that, he's been doubted his whole life. People continue to tell him what his ceiling is, but he's continued to trust in his work and believe in himself and push past everything, no matter what somebody or some group of people has to say about his game. Like, you have to like that, no matter who you are, whether you're a journalist, a fan, a teammate, an opponent. He keeps coming at you. He keeps trying to add different things to his game. He's a pro's pro from everything that I have seen from him. And he definitely turned a corner this season just in the fact of him getting to the rim, getting downhill, putting pressure on the rim, attacking the rim, going to the free throw line at a rate that he had never done before in his career. It wasn't just him relying on his three-point shot and how, volatile it can be from time to time. Like, he was putting his head down. He was throwing his body into people, him and Josh Giddy, actually. But it was remarkable to see the next kind of evolution in this game. We spoke to him at the season presser. I believe he told KC that the next thing he wants to add is being able to force more closeouts, if I'm not mistaken, KC.
Yeah. I can. Are you done? Because I'll take it from there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the easy to root for part, I like that, Drew, because what I've always respected about Coby is he looks inward. He never looks for. There's plenty of players would take some of the things that have happened to him and go, "Woe is me," and rather than doing that, he's gone, all right, you're going to change my role again. I'm going to look inward and figure out this role and play it to the best of my ability. That makes him easy to root for. Plus, he does it while caring about the team and within the context of trying to make the team better. Very easy to root for. And every time you count Kobe out or try to put a ceiling on him, he goes through it. To your point, he told me 2 things he wants to work on this offseason. He's going to watch game film of Steph Curry and his ability to relocate constantly and consistently and create more closeouts for himself off the ball, because he is going to be off the ball more with Josh Giddy back. And then the second thing is, you already touched on this, but he brought up a point I had not thought of. His ability to get to the line. He said he really studied a lot of film with Dan Craig, assistant coach Dan Craig, and he taught him about the virtue of recognizing when a team's in the bonus, and then even trying to sell more fouls when the team's in the bonus. All the years I've been covering basketball, I don't know why I've never thought of that before, but I hadn't. He's recognized how easy those points are and how much that can help his scoring average and efficiency and help the team. So look for Kobe to come back with those 2 things in his bag. He always, as Cam said, adds something in the offseason. And and then the biggest takeaway is he did all this. Cam mentioned this too, as the number 1 option on the opponent's scouting report after the Zach trade. I mean, he was doing all this while teams were targeting him and trying to take him out of games. And so, man, you got big kudos for his season, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, I know we talked about Zach shedding the dunker title and just being more of a complete basketball player. It feels like Kobe is starting to add that dunker title to his resume as well. I mean, Drew talked about attacking the rim, and you guys mentioned just throwing his body into people. But, man, the dunk on 𝗰𝗶𝘶, we were there at the arena. Like, one, it was unexpected because we know how that game was going for that Bulls team, the amount of times that they would attack the lane, and 𝗰𝗶𝘶 was always there. And even when the Bulls would think that they would have an opportunity to lay the basketball up, they would feel the presence of 𝗰𝗶𝘶 and pull the basketball out. But it felt like Kobe in that 4th quarter, especially in that run, he was just like, you know what, to hell with this. If I get it blocked, I get it blocked. Like, we've had our shot blocked time and time again with 𝗰𝗶𝘶 tonight. To hell with it. I'm going in with one arm off one leg, and I'm just going to see what he has. And you have one of the greatest moments from the NBA season in Coby White dunking, and one of the greatest dunks of the NBA season, Coby White taking on 𝗰𝗶𝘶 and dunking on him. And it wasn't like 𝗰𝗶𝘶 was late. 𝗰𝗶𝘶 was there. He was waiting for Kobe. And Kobe, at that point, that's part of the maturity and the leadership role where he's just like, you know what? I'm going in. I don't care. At the end of the day, I'm not a small guard. I'm going after that, one of the biggest obstacles, literally, in the NBA, and just challenging him. And he had success.
And then he mean mugged him, and I gave him a hard time about that in the walk-off interview, and he didn't like that. I was like, because he made that face, you know. Right. Our digital team, our social digital team, did a great job putting out on Twitter and probably other platforms today the top 10 plays of the season. We all know what's number 1, and I know we're going to get to that player, but Kobe's dunk is high on the list. Check it out if you haven't at Bulls on CHSN on the Twitter account. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. I'll give our digital team another shout out towards the end of the pod, but I'm going to shout them out right now because, 1, the amount of work that they put in, but then also 2, the quality and the professionalism that they do it at is really, really cool, especially getting out everything when it comes to the pods on CHSN and, of course, with By the Horn. So we appreciate them. But, yeah, I really now with Kobe am ready to see him take another step, as we all are, right, and get to that all-star level. And easier said than done when you think about the guards in the Eastern Conference of some spots that he would have to jump into. But we saw it from another player in the East, in Tyler Hero with the Miami Heat this past season, of what he was able to do and take that next step without Jimmy Butler and turn himself into an all-star and all the turmoil that was going on down in Miami. So not to say if Tyler Hero can do it, that Kobe can do it, and trying to compare these guys, but we've seen more from Kobe just because we covered him, and we've seen the growth of his game season in and season out, that it feels like that next step, that next evolution is getting to that all-star level, which I think he will get to hopefully next season, Drew.
I mean, yeah, it's not going to be, an easy task. I think one thing you left out there is winning. Like, winning is going to help his cause. Making an all-star team. And I'm done kind of doubting Coby White. I do have my reservations about a backcourt led by him and Josh Giddy, but we'll say that for another day or later on in this pod. I don't know. But in terms of just doubting what he can do as a basketball player, I'm done kind of putting my limitations on him. It's just kind of a wait and see mode, I guess.
Go ahead, KC. KC's getting ready to jump in.
No, I'm good. We should talk about Josh, though, because, that is a valid thing. Like, that's kind of that storyline certainly gained some momentum down the stretch of the season, is because obviously Josh is going to get paid this summer, and then Kobe's up the following summer, because there's no way in hell he's extending this summer, even though he dodged that question at his season-ending exit interview. I haven't talked to my agents yet. Stop.
Yeah. Come on.
No, they're both going to get paid. If they're both paid by the Bulls, is that backcourt, are they the 1-2 or 2-3 on a championship level team? It's certainly a valid debate. Are either one of them ever going to be an all-star team? They're both very, very good players. Don't get us wrong, but it's certainly a good debate. Josh is such an interesting case because, he closed the season like Kobe in such spectacular fashion, highlighted by that Lakers shot, and just, his ability to get downhill and stop shooting that floater and get to the rim. But there was a time early in the season, not too long ago, I remember when he wasn't closing games, and we all remember that. So, Sam Smith had a great question asking Josh point blank, which player is the one that the Bulls are going to be paying this summer? And obviously Josh is going to pick the one that, impacted games as high as it did. And I would probably lean that way too, being around Josh. Talk about another guy who to me is very, very self-aware and also looks inward. I was there for that low point of the season in Cleveland. It felt like a therapy session in that post-game locker room where he was just like, it was very early in the season. The Cavaliers hunted him every possession. It brought back the playoff memories from when he got benched with the Thunder. And that dude was as despondent of an athlete as I've been around in a long time. But he did not say it's that person's fault or that person's fault. He said, I need to get better. I need to start taking on the challenge. I need to watch film. And he said it on his exit interview too. Like, I'm never going to be a lockdown defender. Let's get it straight. But you can compete at that end and be physical at that end and still make some kind of impact if you do those two things. And I saw more of that consistently down the stretch from Josh Giddy than I did earlier in the season.
Yeah, that's the one thing for me for Josh, and just listening to him post game. And KC, that's a great point of, how he was very self-aware, as he always is, when you talk to Josh post game, but in Cleveland, and just like, hey, I have to be better. And the accountability that he's taken time and time again for himself, even when he has a great game, like you go back to the, one of the greatest finishes that we've seen in a while when it comes to the Bulls, but definitely the greatest finish that we've seen in the NBA this season. He never really took the credit of it. He just talked about his teammates and just, other guys stepping up and making plays. And so for a guy that struggled and went through hell, really trying to find himself and find some type of chemistry with his team, and of course, how he was being treated in the media and the skeptics out there. And of course, people are like, okay, well, him being traded straight up for 𝗚liche Caruso, and some fans saying that Caruso should have still been here. Josh did not take that moment to say, oh, yeah, this is what I do, or yeah, I'm this, I'm that. He gave all the praise to his teammates of really putting himself in that position. And so I think that's really massive when you think about who Josh is as a person, right? And at the end of the day, you gain respect from not only your teammates, but the city of Chicago when you do things like that. And his effort was better on the defensive end because he understood the effort that was required to defend and make plays on that end of the floor. But once he found his chemistry with his team, it was like this dude, you're just like, all right, you start to treat him like 𝗍liche 𝗄𝗏 at one point, like, oh, another triple double for Josh Giddy. Like, it's just, it was just, assumed that he would finish the game with a triple double, and he finished top 10 in the NBA in triple doubles this season. So it's really a credit to his perseverance as a player with his team and just off the court as well. You talked about him being self-aware, KC, and that's just one thing that I love about players when they are very inward and they're self-aware, and they take on the responsibility of when they're not playing well, they don't use scapegoats. They really throw themselves in the fire and say, no, it was me. I have to be better because if I'm not better, then this team can't be better.
Yeah, and one thing I really liked about Josh was the fact that anytime after a game where he had a triple-double or put up these major statistics, like he always talked about, yeah, that's nice, but winning is more important, and those stats don't mean anything without that win. So I did appreciate that about him. And there was a notable – his absence was notable in those games that he missed down the stretch with that hand injury. You could feel his difference. You can feel the Bulls not playing up to a certain level when he was not on the court. So I definitely have to give him that, the way that he turned it on late in the season, and he did impact winning. I believe they went 17-13 in the last 30 games, 15-5 in the last 3. I feel like that's those numbers are well worn in the Bulls community, but it's unfortunate in a way that those wins came in the stretch that they came in, because it was in February and March, and it's easy to kind of nitpick who they were playing, who wasn't playing in those games for some of his opponents, who was on a back-to-back and all of that. But, he can't control, neither can the Bulls control who's on their schedule, who's in front of them. So you have to give them credit for what they were able to do, the tempo they were able to keep throughout the entire season, even back before the trade deadline, and just how much that went into them being able to get the wins that they did get, wearing teams down. They talked about it often, how late in fourth quarters teams would, have their hands on their knees and talk about how fast the Bulls were playing. And, with Billy Donovan going 9, 10, sometimes 11 deep earlier in the season, it kind of proof is in the pudding with them being able to run, at least in a regular season. We'll see, come next season and beyond, if they continue to play this way, if that style can be used in the postseason. But you got to give it up for Josh Giddy, for Kobe, everybody in that second half of the season.
He said it again, Drew, at the exit interviews too, about how like you get paid to win games in this league. It's not, and he said that's the next level I need to get to is impact winning. So that point you made about him saying that after big individual games, he got it in the broader sense too about his next contract. Now he's probably gonna get paid regardless. And what's weird is like he started like 78 games for that Thunder team that year before the troubles happened, in the playoffs. And that was a good Thunder team too. So he can be a part of a winning team. It's just obviously you want to see him do it, like you said, throughout the season rather than just in March, April basketball in the NBA.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And you look at his numbers in the month of March, where he averaged 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. And then you get to, obviously, what he was able to do in those certain games where he would have the triple-doubles, and started just a great run of triple-doubles there. But you go to April with those four games where he averaged 20, 10, and 13. So he finally unlocked that chemistry that was eluding him for a good part of the season. And it's not like he was hunting those triple-doubles. And I think that's the great thing about Josh as well, is that you have a lot of guys that hunt those numbers, but he just allowed the game to come to him. I think the aggression for him, especially with his shot, with the development that he was able to do with Peter Patton, and of course with his Bulls team and putting the work in there, what he was able to shoot from three. I mean, 53% in February, it dropped down to 35% in March, but then rose back up to 40% in April. So he, from an aggression, step into my shot off a swing, or even pull up 3-pointers that we saw Josh knock down, especially against the Miami Heat, where it's hilarious. And Drew, you asked Kevin Huerter this question after that big win against the Miami Heat in the regular season, which was a massive win for that Bulls team. Did he know that Josh had a pull-up 3 in his bag? And Kevin was just like, no, I didn't know that, but I know now. And so Josh just said it wasn't anything that was premeditated. It was just the flow of the game and him stepping into that shot. But I think that's a great sign of just how the preparation, the work that he put in, and then also the confidence level when it came to him shooting the basketball, all culminated into that moment where Drew and I looked at each other when he came down the court, KC, and pulled up and knocked down the 3. We're just like, wait a minute. Josh is shooting pull-up 3s now? Okay, all right. Well, he's a guy that is really feeling himself.
And we're like, wait a minute, give Peter Patton a raise. Oh, wait. Go watch the video of the fast break. I talked about Peter Patton there, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. There you go. Make sure you tap into KC's Fast Break, man. Always great content. Is what you expect from K.C Johnson. Right, exactly.
I'm the anti-Josh Giddy. It's all about me, man. Screw you guys. Watch the Fast Break.
KC's like, move out of the way, Drew and Cam. Look, I'm taking all the shots. Even if I miss, I'm getting the rebound. I'm putting it back in, man. I want to self-pass to myself, throw some alley-oops to myself. So some assists there. We've touched on a number of guys with this Bulls team, and one guy that wanted to have a bounce-back year in terms of how he shot the basketball was 𝗵cije Vucevic and what he was able to do. And it felt like at times when you discussed this Bulls team coming into the season, and we heard from Billy Donovan in terms of how they wanted to play, how they want to be up-tempo and take a lot of threes. And some people were wondering, would Vuce get lost in this offense? What would he be? What type of Vuce would we see, Drew? And so you had a guy that, of course, when he had his media day, he wanted to make sure that he improved on his three-point shots. And as you saw the work that he put in, how it really, for him, came to fruition throughout the season of shooting the basketball, where he shot, I believe, at least 40% from three. It was the way he was getting his shots. It wasn't anything forced, and this was something that Vuce touched on throughout the season, especially when he had his great run of just shooting the leather off the basketball from the arc. That he said that last year compared to this year is that he wasn't forcing his shots. He allowed the game to come to him, and he just felt comfortable within this new up-tempo offense for this Bulls team.
Yeah, aside from maybe a little bit of a lull post-trade deadline, first of the year, he shot the ball tremendously. I think he finished with 8.8 estimated wins. He led the team, if you guys are into advanced analytics, which spoke to the season he had. He played tremendous. He fit, like I said, right in with the style of play that the Bulls chose to adopt this season, kind of serving as that outlet in transition, above the break threes. Like he was on the money. It was at a point in the season where I was like, man, can Vuce be like the oldest player ever to win most improved player? Like the way he was shooting the ball, both inside the arc and at the rim, was just ridiculous. I was not expecting him to put up the kind of efficiency numbers that he did this season. It was kind of wild to see, and he really helped him and Zach in terms of the two kind of leading veterans on the team, really helped that team get to an 18-20 record in the first 38 games of the season. I know that doesn't sound great, but our expectations coming into the season were 25, 27, 28 wins. So for them to have been at 18-20, it was kind of a surprise. It was really a surprise.
He shot a career high from the field and from three-point range. I mean, in year 14, 15, whatever he's in, I should know that. It's a lot. Yeah, I mean, the dude had a great year. Now get him out of here because he wants to be playing for a winning team. He told us that at his exit interview, and he doesn't. I mean, he fits because, to his credit, you can play him in that slow line offense that they played with DeMar, or you can play him in the fast lineup. Or fast offense as a trail big, and his decision-making, you can run offense through him at the hub. So kudos to Vuce. Wonderful player, very skilled. Now find a home for him because, and I know they tried at the deadline, and Golden State, after the Butler trade, ran out of players. But, man, you've got three centers under contract. Vuce deserves to be in a winning situation. And it would certainly help the Bulls rebuild if you can somehow parlay him into some draft capital for moving forward.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you, K.C. Like, what could the Bulls realistically get back for Vuce if moved? I mean, obviously it depends on the team and the situation, but just looking how he played this past season, and you talked about how he shot career highs from the field and also from three, but also this was a guy, Drew, you're mentioning, could he be like, one of the oldest, most improved guys in the NBA getting that award? I was leading up to the All-Star break and really the selection for the Eastern Conference All-Stars. I was really promoting Vuce to get an All-Star nod. I thought he was playing that well heading into that selection for the Eastern Conference All-Stars. So, KC, what do you think that they could get back for Vuce, maybe player or picks-wise?
I think they will try to trade him this offseason. This is just a guess. I know they will try to trade him this offseason. My guess is they will not be able to. And similar to last season, he will have more value at the deadline. Now it'll be a rental because it'll be a short-term rental unless you can, obviously do some behind-the-scenes negotiations like that Jimmy Butler extension was signed like 2 seconds after he was traded. But look, if he plays well again, he's going to have value at the deadline next year for a team that just looks at that one piece to get them over the top or help them try to get over the top. So I personally think he will be dealt. This is my guess. My educated guess will be he'll be dealt next February in 2026. And the last thing I want to make clear, and I know he won't care because Vuce is so chill. But I also want to say, from a personal standpoint, I would hate to see Vuce go. He's like the greatest guy ever to cover. But I'm joking about getting him out of here because he deserves to be in a better situation than what he's in right here.
No doubt about that at all. Especially just looking at his career with this Bulls team, and just he's a walking double-double, and he's proven that time and time again, season after season, with the Chicago Bulls, and still has a lot left there for a team that, in Vuce's words, where he wants to win now. And of course, he wants to be with a playoff team that has a legitimate chance of winning an NBA championship. Not too many teams like that in the Eastern Conference, I would say, just personally. I think West, you have more opportunity there with teams that are, just in terms of the roster construction and what they have, are more NBA championship or NBA finals ready. So we'll see just how that plays out, maybe this offseason or going up to the trade deadline for next year. I know there are a number of guys that we haven't touched on with this group. So not to kind of go one by one throughout the entire roster, but there were obviously certain guys like Ayo Dosunmu that took another step with their career. Of course, he dealt with multiple injuries throughout this season, and the one that really took him out was the shoulder injury that, resulted in him having season-ending shoulder surgery, which puts him out for a while. So just, personally from Ayo, and we all know him and have covered him and spoken to him and spoken to him in depth. They were just hoping for a speedy recovery for him. But he grew in a number of areas with his team. And we heard about the offseason workouts and runs that the Bulls had down in Miami that was orchestrated by Ayo and Coby White, and just the respect that they had as leaders amongst their teammates with this group. So what were the expectations for Ayo, and how did he exceed those expectations in some ways? Anybody can take this.
Go ahead, Drew.
Oh, the expectations for Ayo. I think just to try to – you couldn't talk about coming into this season, right?
Yeah, well, coming into the season, and then what we saw from him, how did he kind of take another step for himself?
I think to show that the way he shot the ball last season wasn't a fluke. I think he shot it 40. Was he 40% shooter last season, KC, from deep around there?
Yeah.
I think he fell short of that mark. I'm pretty sure this season got off to a slow start, picked it up a little bit, but he's still similar to Kobe. The way that he was attacking the rim, just like the road runner out there, pushing the ball in fast break, maybe the quickest guy on the team with the ball in his hands, kind of showed me something this season for a team that, kind of early on in the season relied on driving kicks and shooting the three ball. He was one of the ones who was actually getting to the rim and finishing and kind of taking advantage of the defense in that way. Defensively, I think that, he still played it well on that side of the ball. It's tough because there's not a lot of great individual defenders on this team. There's some pretty good team defenders, but he was kind of a man on the island a little bit in that regard, not having, Caruso next to him anymore. But, you hope that he has a speedy recovery. He seems to be in great spirits, even when he spoke to us before he actually had the surgery. And in a promo he did for Raising Cane's like a couple weeks ago, again, just great spirits. It was good to see him carry himself in that way. And you hope that he comes back next season ready to play and healthy.
One of the better two-way players on the team, to me, personified the Bulls' style of play. I mean, he's the best at getting the ball down the court fastest, other than Lonzo, but he plays more than Lonzo. Best downhill player on the Bulls. Maybe Kobe and Josh got in the neighborhood, but attacks the rim relentlessly. Just a solid rotation player for any team in the league. My thing is and this is just speculation here. I'm not, this is just complete speculation, but if you're trying to trade, let's say, a guy like Patrick Williams this offseason, you would have to attach an asset to even interest a team to do that. And given the surplus of guards, would Ayo be one of those potential assets attached to shopping Patrick around? I think the shoulder surgery hurts in that regard. Yeah. So this is why I think this is a long shot. But these are the kind of conversations and decisions the front office have to be having this offseason, especially given the surplus of guards. Jevon Carter probably picking up his player option. There is some internal desire to try to re-sign Tre Jones. I don't think it's going to happen. And again, I would hate to see Ayo go because he's as professional as they come and just such a solid player. But that's something to keep an eye on. I think the shoulder surgery will probably make that a very small possibility. But the only way you're going to get Patrick Williams the change of scenery he needs and the Bulls need is by attaching an asset to him. And Ayo would be an asset for any team in the league.
It's one of those situations where you see, and we talked about this with Josh Giddy, of course, with Kobe's ascension of that backcourt and what it could be as you move forward with this Bulls team. But it's always going to be a ripple effect, like how that impacts other players and their status and their situation with this team. And you look at Ayo, and if you're trying, to your point, KC, move Patrick Williams, that's a piece there. If you're trying to swing for the fences and make a deal for Vuce and get him somewhere where he's playing with a particular team, or try and get something in return in terms of multiple draft picks or somewhat of a starter or star player, you have to attach Ayo to that deal as well, just to sweeten it. But again, the shoulder surgery, the shoulder issue is a concern for teams that will be at that negotiation table. Of course, Ayo will have to prove that everything is okay with that, but it's one of those tough spots where he's a great guy. He's done so much in his time with his Bulls team and completing his fourth season this past season. But at the end of the day, it's one of those business things with the NBA that's associated with it. So just a lot of decisions for this Bulls front office have to be made this offseason. And so that's kind of, I guess, we can take the pod now and take this episode is offseason thoughts, expectations, if you have them, more so curiosity of what this Bulls team will do this offseason to help this roster and really take another step in terms of this new era, this new look Bulls team.
I heard largely a management regime that sounds like they're going to be running it back. I mean, here Arturas asked for patience from fans, and internal development was the theme. So that to me certainly sounded like a management regime that's going to be set on mostly bringing this team back intact. It's obvious to state that the only way they're going to be able to make significant changes this offseason is via the trade market. He has been aggressive with trades in the past. I can guarantee you, even though he sounded open-minded to this, the days of trading first-round picks are in the past, at least for this short term. This sounds like obviously they want to hit on draft picks moving forward. They've got them. They worked hard to get them all back. So you're going to be adding a first and second round pick. You got a lot of guaranteed contracts coming back. I believe 12. Giddy would be 13. Not a lot of roster spots left. So unless there are trades in this offseason, I expect largely the team back intact. I do think they will try to make some trades this offseason. We all know it takes 2 or 3 teams to tango. Drew?
Yeah, I mean, short and sweet of it, I just want to see what number Josh maybe winds up getting if they do allow him to hit the market in the way they didn't allow Patrick Williams to hit the market. We tried to ask AK about that at the end of the season presser, but he wasn't going for it.
I doubled back on your question. I tried to jump on the pile for you. It still didn't work, man.
No,
that was the by the horns teamwork. If you guys are watching that press conference for AK end of season press conference between KC and Drew, I love when I was watching. I'm like, look at my guys tag team on this one. That's what I'm talking about.
You tried. AK wasn't taking the bait though. But no, just seeing what happens with Josh, and then who the Bulls wind up taking in the draft is another big thing I'm looking at going into this summer.
Yeah, they got 12 guaranteed, and Giddy would be 13. So you add 2 draft picks, that's 15. So, and this is assuming Carter picks up his player option. But so anyway, that's why unless they make a trade, they're going to be running this back mostly.
Yeah, and you talk about those draft picks, and I know some people out there are looking at the odds for the Bulls to get the number 1 overall pick. It sits at 1.7%, very identical to what we saw in 2008 when the Bulls got the number 1 overall pick. And we know who they drafted, and it just added more just glory to this Bulls franchise and so many great basketball memories for people in the city of Chicago. I'm not saying that they will get the number 1 overall pick. I'm just throwing the odds out there. But what we do know is that potentially they could add a piece that could help this team depending on who that player is. And we saw the development of Matas Buzelis. I think that's one thing that you can take from what we've seen for this coaching staff and how they're able to develop him. I'm just trying to go with some positive stuff, KC, and try and see if they can add a guy that can a young guy that can help this group.
Well, the former writer in me has already seen the headline. They once planted a rose, now they need to plant a flag. Hey.
Oh, KC with the bars, baby, and that's why he's K.C. Johnson, no doubt. I love that, KC. And if we see that anywhere else, we know that you're, 1, listening and watching the By the Horns podcast, but also, 2, that you're biting off our guy, K.C. Johnson. So don't do that. Any variation of that, we know where you got it from right there, man. So don't do that. And KC doesn't have a ghostwriter. He's K.C. Johnson. Doesn't need.
You can see my writing chops are a lot of practice. That was pretty bad.
Look, I will say this as we get ready to wrap this episode, the season-ending episode for the By the Horns podcast, that for me it has been an honor working with both of you guys. Drew, bringing you to the pod, and one for me coming onto the pod and having the privilege of addressing Bulls fans and having these conversations, and the outlet of the Chicago Sports Network, and our superhero producer, Edgar Perez, that produces all of the pods for CHSN. Look, if you need and know of a guy that can get it done when it comes to just camera work, because Edgar was a camera guy. We worked together at the old Stadium Network, but when it comes to pods and digital stuff, Edgar is that dude, man. He is a guy that has gone above and beyond. I'm not sure on the amount of sleep that he's lost throughout this Bulls season and just this sports season, but I'm sure it's a hell of a lot. But the quality of work for Edgar has never dropped off. And he needs his flowers for sure. So I know that I can speak for KC and Drew on this, but Edgar, we appreciate you. We are grateful for you for all that you do for us and the Chicago Sports Network and the By the Horns pod.
And he's got a cute kid.
Absolutely.
Yes, young Santiago. Yes. But no, it has been an honor and a pleasure working with you, Drew, and for you, K.C. Johnson, and with you, KC. It's for me a dream covering this Bulls team and being able to get thoughts and opinions and share in some of the great things that we saw from this Bulls group with the By the Horns podcast. So thank you guys for doing what you do and being who you are. So I'll just leave it there. I know you guys have your piece that you want to say, so I'll leave it there. Go ahead.
Again, short and sweet. Like, I appreciate you guys so much. I've said it before. I've tweeted it. Come Bulls wins, come Bulls losses. I'm living the dream. Like, to be here with you guys talking hoops, to have my second podcast with K.C. Johnson, man, it's awesome, man. I truly am like a kid in the candy store here, man. I can't say enough about this opportunity that you guys have given me, and the pleasure has been to cover this team with the both of you.
Yeah, I'll just say I've always said many times I've never taken the opportunity to cover one team in my near hometown, because I'm not one of those people who claim I'm from Chicago, because I'm from Evanston, but my near hometown for as long as I have. I've never taken that opportunity or responsibility for granted. I feel very blessed to have been associated with one team for as long as I have, and it's been a fun first season with the new network. Obviously, coming over from NBC was new for me, meeting new people and vibing with different energies and nuances, and I've loved every second of it. So shout out to thank you for everybody for listening and watching, and let's do it again next season, and more in the off season. We're gonna come at you with some other episodes. Yeah,
exactly. This isn't it. We're not singing Boys to Men End of the Road right now. That's not playing in the background. No, we'll still be bringing some great conversation and content to everybody on the By the Horns podcast throughout the offseason as things update with this Bulls team. But KC, you mentioned this, just that transition from NBC Sports Chicago to the Chicago Sports Network, and everybody that still stayed true and for people that, want to see, all right, well, what would the feel be? What would the energy be with the new network and the new pod? But we appreciate everybody that stuck with us and made that transition with us. And it's been an honor really serving you. And that's the biggest thing about that. And I think that's the biggest flowers go to all of our listeners and viewers that watch the By the Horns podcast on the Chicago Sports Network YouTube page. So thank you for your questions, your comments, the DMs, every single thing. We appreciate you guys, because we wouldn't be able to have this show without you, and you definitely you keep things going for us. So we are grateful for you and the fans, and of course the Chicago Sports Network for what we were able to do with the By the Horns podcast. And I know Edgar Perez, our producer, is like, all right, come on, Cam, wrap it up, because I'm trying to get to sleep, because this dude again has missed out on a lot of sleep. But it has been for sure a privilege this season, doing some great work with some great people for sure. All right, that will do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast. We finish up the season, and look, this is not it. This is not it. We will have more coming your way this off season, but know that the By the Horns podcast is presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Thank you again. We will talk to you soon. Enjoy the off season. Enjoy some playoff basketball. Take care.